Welcome back to the Customer Discovercast. This is season 2, episode 2. I'm here with John Sillings, who is the founder and CEO of ArtInRes, backed by Y Combinator, very on brand with our season 2 theme of Y Combinator backed companies. We're peeling back the curtain about the experience with YC, both getting in the experience while you're in and then getting out, essentially. So, John, welcome.
Ethan, thanks so much. It's an honor to be on the podcast. I actually didn't know it was a YC theme, but I definitely want to get into YC. YC is awesome. We had a great experience. Just a bit of background on myself. I'm a former financial analyst. I did that for 7 or 8 years. Then we started working on my company, ArtInRes, me and a few friends. We started work about 4 years ago, launched almost 3 years ago. And in a nutshell, what we do is we make art collecting affordable and accessible to folks like you and me. And we help artists who haven't quite broken into the gallery scene yet, or who are just starting out, make a living selling their art.
Absolutely. That's amazing, man. So, we spoke a little bit offline, but talk about that's I think of it from if you think two halves of the brain, right? The very analytical, mathematical mindset that you probably had to go through being a financial analyst at a hedge fund, to very ambiguous, like, how do you grade art? I'm sure the criteria for grading, and talk more about that. What led you to go from kind of that, binary, lifestyle, which was probably compensated very well, into being a bootstrap founder at first, right? And talk about that switch.
For sure. Yeah. So it's not just me. Everyone on the team, we're like a team of very like systems thinking kind of people, but we all have artistic outlets. So everyone on the team, we have basically stand-up comedy, fine art, music, acting, and screenwriting. Everyone on the team has like one of those outlets. But then at the same time, we're very like data driven in how we try to make decisions. Like, you know, do we have the right balance of art available on the website? Is the pricing right? Which geography should we be targeting? Which demographics should we be targeting in terms of age, that kind of thing? And then there are all kinds of soft considerations. So definitely working both sides of the brain. And then to answer your question on like the curatorial side, because clearly it's important. I mean, it's a major edge that we think we have, and a few other online marketplaces do really well, is having good quality. Because as a buyer of art, especially one we're targeting who's like a kind of a newbie, you want to have that confidence that what you're getting is good. And we have a curatorial team now, but in the beginning it was just like, us doing our best, and me leaning very heavily on my co-founder, who's also named John, who is trained as an artist. So it's kind of his
Oh,
thing.
really? I actually didn't know that your co-founder is an artist. That makes sense. Yeah.
He has a great story. He's an artist who became a software developer. So like very, very typical kind of like beginning of the story with a twist ending. So like he went to art school, moved to New York City to pursue art full time.
Yeah.
If you want to be an artist, you pretty much, if you want to be a big artist, it really helps to be in a big city, because, buyers are there, galleries are there.
Great culture for it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's, New York City is expensive. I think you told me that you lived in New York too, right?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
On 42nd and 11th. Yeah.
It's an expensive city. Even when I was like a financial analyst, I was like, paying a lot of money to live in a tiny little kind of
even the food.
apartment.
Yeah, the food is expensive as well. Drinks,
So anyway, so John, was starting out as an artist in New York. He needed a way to pay the bills. He taught himself to code to do that, and turns out he's very, very good at coding. He's a fantastic engineering type person. So yeah, but yeah, trained as an artist and knows a ton about art.
Yeah. I was going to say, when you think of an artist that goes to software engineering, there's back end and there's front end. I would automatically assume that he would be a very UI UX design oriented software developer. Is that the case? No.
Back end. He loves back end. I mean, both him and Dan, that's our engineering team. They can do both, but John really owns the back end and loves that.
Wow, really? So like systems architecture and stuff of that nature?
Yeah, and that's important for us because, Obviously, like we have all the marketplace functionality we need to build, and there are important backend considerations there. But um, our model allows you to buy art in installments. So we actually built our own bespoke, Affirm or Afterpay like
Oh, really?
business logic on the back end for that, or I
Wow.
should
I
say,
was going to say that, like when you initially mentioned that, I was like, oh, Affirm does that, but you guys natively built that into ArtInRes. That's incredible.
yeah. Well, we wanted some stuff that Affirm doesn't let you do, and we also wanted just like complete control over how it worked. Uh, but and there's also another reason too, which is we started as a art rental marketplace before we sold art in installments.
Really? I'm on your website right now, and this is the first time I've really diving deep into like the database of art or the collections that you have. And there's some like Salvador Dali nuances, like Nikki Shapiro, I believe is the artist.
Mhm.
That I want to know, how did you go about curating what makes the cut of Art and Res? I'm sure it's a very competitive cut.
Yeah, so we have the curatorial team. We basically have an internal voting system to determine who gets on and who doesn't.
Ah,
There's a sort of like internal rubric we use, but generally it boils down to subjective considerations on the part of our curators, combined with data for what we know you know works for our collector community. Um,
nice.
that being said, we have about 300 artists on the platform now, and our acceptance rate for artists is it's always been in the sort of like 15 to 20% range. So we've looked at a lot of artist applications, and luckily we get a lot of artist applications. And we clearly take the curation seriously.
Gotcha. So this is a question I've always had, and it was like hard for me to contain it because I was like, I really want to know about the earlier stage because I obsess about like customer discovery, customer development. This is such a unique business model. Is there anyone else out there that does anything like this right now? This is the leading question into my main question.
um No, not really. So to be determined how smart or not smart we are, I guess. But the closest thing there is to it that exists is there are some art rental marketplaces which function kind of similarly. But what we actually found was that like the rental aspect, we had a bunch of renters. We had traction with this consumer art rental product. But what people really wanted was to buy in installments. Virtually all of our rentals were
Ah,
actually installment purchases as far as
gotcha.
how the
They want
buyer
to
would.
see how it looked on the wall, and then they're like, "Yeah, I think it'll stay there."
Well, no, that was what we thought. We were like, so from the very beginning, right? I had this art collecting hobby, and I was like, there are people like me who don't know about this like vast, rich world of art that's affordable that you can buy. Um, and the goal was always to get more people into the fold of knowing that it's truly accessible and affordable. So we started with the rental marketplace because we were like, this is the perfect entree. Like people will try before they buy. But when we actually like talk to our users in a really structured way, which is something Y Combinator really stresses when you go through the program, or even beforehand, if you read, Paul Graham's work,
Yeah.
um, what we found was like, yeah, people are paying for our rental product, but that's not the product they actually want at all. It's the installment payments. They're jerry rigging this thing we built so
Yeah.
they can buy artwork in installments.
Wow. Oh, that's a perfect segue. I couldn't have come up with a better segue because that's kind of a validation point, right? So okay. Well, you probably analyzed that through data, and I don't want to ruin the answer, but obviously I'm going to ask you about customer discovery, right? You went from hedge fund analyst, or sorry, financial analyst at a hedge fund. I'm not familiar with all the terms there, but um, did you like you probably were working on this part time while you were still working at that hedge fund, right? Or no, did you quit completely?
I was. It was it was intense.
You're already like working at a hedge fund. How many hours a week are you already working?
Uh, Anywhere from 80 to 100 a week
Yeah.
was like between the two.
Yeah, I've heard horror stories about that, like how like investment bankers and whatnot work like hundreds of hours a week. How did you find the time not just for the idea, but to like implement the early stages of the idea?
Yeah, well, so I would do about 40 to 50 hours on my day job, and then
Okay.
I would go home. I would hop in an Uber. I would go over to my co-founder's place, and then we would bang out work until like midnight. And then I'd come home,
Do it
get a
all.
few winks of sleep, and then do it again.
When
It
did you
was,
eat?
you know, I,
Sparingly? You stop at the bodega?
yeah, pretty much. You know,
Get a
it's New York
bacon, egg,
City,
and
right?
cheese?
So it's not eating wasn't a problem, but I was totally exhausted.
I
Um,
bet.
it was Yeah. Although, I basically kept that pace.
How long
Uh,
did that last for, by the way? Like that time period before you officially quit your job?
that went on for about 6 months.
6 months? And when did you know it was time to quit your job?
I didn't. We launched and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to just like do this full time now.
Okay.
So, we had no traction. We had no validation. I mean, I was just like, I don't know. I was feeling
Oh,
it.
it's
So
time. Yeah, let's
yeah,
do this.
yeah.
That's where
Uh,
were you were in the financial district, living South Manhattan, or where were you at the time?
I actually lived in Midtown at that time, around
Midtown?
Columbus Circle, if you're familiar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
I was in a little apartment there.
wow. So, when you quit what I'm getting at is like you lived in the city. When you quit your job, you really have to understand like rent is pretty expensive.
Mhm.
What did you do? Like, were you guys already profitable at that point at the end of that 6 month period?
We literally had no revenue when I quit my job. We had
But you
launched.
knew that you were hell bent that this was something you wanted to make work.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly.
Wow. And okay, so now how did you
Irrational
go?
self-confidence.
Well, no, you're an analyst, so I'm sure you had some sort of framework for grading this idea. But did you? Okay, so you said you had no form of validation. Okay, so you quit your job. How do you go about the idea of validation? How'd you do that?
Um, well, I mean, validation, in my opinion, really boils down to one thing, which is, are people going to pay you for your product? So that was really what it came down to for us, is like, are we selling? And if not, what is it that people are willing to actually like part with their hard-earned money to
Mm,
buy? And it took us a lot of experimentation, a lot of like mini pivots, one sort of like larger pivot before we really felt like we were onto something.
okay.
But the YC folks clearly saw something in us, because we only had a little bit of traction when we got in. I mean, we
Okay.
were doing maybe like uh, $5,000 a month in GMV or something like that, which isn't a ton.
Nice. Well, before we get into the YC side, so okay, you quit your job 6 months after you started working on this. What? How long was it after that 6 month period before you got into YC? Because let's cover this time period before we cover YC. Was it
Yeah.
another six
So
months or longer?
so we launch, um, living in Manhattan. John's got his own place. Uh, we need to save money, so we moved in together with actually another co-founder in the business.
Okay.
Um, so we're living in this tiny apartment, not actually not too tiny, but you know, we're living in an apartment all together in Crown Heights in Brooklyn,
Hmm.
and it's just like a little engine room in there. I mean, it was a little crazy. I mean, we basically like lived with like bubble wrap and boxes all over, because we're sending artwork all over the country to like rent it
Yeah.
and receive it.
Oh, that's
Um,
scary, man. You got to be so careful.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and we're just, I don't know.
Got to be careful having guests over, right? There's
I
precious
mean,
artwork everywhere.
that was a cool thing about the that phase where we were doing a lot of like the packing and shipping and handling and stuff, was that we just like had beautiful artwork in our apartment while the artist would like wait to pick it up, or we had to drop it off to them and stuff.
Yeah,
Beautiful,
you probably had
beautiful.
one of the most valuable apartments in all of New York City for that time period right there, right? In all of Brooklyn, right? That's intense. So, how long was that time period? Like, how you guys were just really in the weeds for how long?
That was another like 8 months or so. Then we
Okay.
applied to YC, got the interview, got in, and moved out to California.
Wow. All three of you guys, again, same house, working out, or apartment, same place?
Two of us, one co-founder stayed in New York. Two of us plus Dan, who does the front end for us, who we brought on later.
Gotcha. Wow. So at that point, so you're in YC with 5K GMR, you said? I'm not familiar with the term GMR, by the way. What is that?
Yeah,
MRR?
GMV.
GMV? What's
GMV
that?
is gross merchandise value. So we're a marketplace business.
Hmm.
So we have like a total transaction value that happens on the marketplace. That's our GMV.
Okay.
And then we have a cut of that, a commission of that.
Hmm.
Um, in our case, it's effectively about 20%, and that's our revenue.
Okay. Gotcha.
So
That makes sense.
20% of $5,000 ain't much.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
$1,000, right?
I
So
see what you're saying now. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. But I think, like, does YC give you insight into why you were accepted, by the way? So I'm sure they said, wow, your execution up until this point, regardless of how much traction you have, is a very strong indicator as to how you're going to perform in the future, right? Did they say something along those lines?
They really didn't. They told us that they believed in us and our idea. I think that I'm sort of, I can kind of fill in some of the blanks. I mean, we're very like creative and hustlery kind of team. We all moved in together. We like basically lived in like a shipping operation slash warehouse. Like we converted our whole apartment and our whole lives to like an office,
Were there any
basically.
questions that like the doorman would be like, hey, what's going on?
No, we didn't have a doorman. We were, we were trying to just like survive. And
Yeah.
so we were not in like a fancy building or anything like that.
Right. Eating
Um,
halal food out on the street. I learned my lesson the hard way, man. I've been there, done that. You got to be careful about which shops you go to. The ones in Times Square, got to be careful. But you guys were really on that ramen noodle diet or halal food diet, depending
we
on where you
were,
were.
yeah, I mean, and we still are like that. I mean, we run a lean operation and we work really damn hard.
Yeah,
I think that's more or less what they probably liked about us.
yeah,
And I think they liked the concept.
absolutely. Yeah, man. Wow. So, okay, now we're at the YC application phase. You get in. Now what? Like once you guys move out there and your batch starts, and there's so much ambiguity about this space. What is going on with the YC batch? They've grown so quickly, but they do a really good job from what I've heard from speaking with other YC founders, is that they do a really good job of breaking it down and still giving you that attention. But like, what was it like the first 90 days? How long? YC is about 3 months, right? Or the
Mhm.
actual batch? Yeah. So what was the
Yeah.
first month like actually?
Um, first month was a whirlwind. It was awesome. So about 300 companies in the batch. So a lot of like meeting other companies. And I mean, it's just, you know, I feel like I'm a pretty average guy. I was just like astounded by just like the brain power, the creativity. Like some people had already built like huge companies who were going through YC,
Really?
doing like millions of dollars a year.
Jeez,
Um,
I didn't know
it
that. Wow.
was it was awesome. I mean, I'm just like I'm very honored to have been a part of the batch because my peers are just like such an amazing group. So a lot of spending time with them. And then one really awesome thing is that you basically go through like a boot camp type thing when you get to YC, where you
Okay.
spend 3 or 4 days in Mountain View in their offices, and you have these incredible partners who have built huge businesses, teaching you basically from like their specialty, like how do you do viral user growth, how do you do B2B sales, how do you do
Mhm.
user interviews, what are like the ways you should think about marketing channels, like all this kind of stuff. It was That part was really sweet. I mean,
What
it
was the
was
most
just
difficult part for you from all of those things that they taught?
um I think sales is a thing that didn't like come naturally to me because I always kind of figured it was I think I just fundamentally didn't understand sales.
Mm,
Like I always thought it was about like persuading someone to want
take
your
action.
thing
Right.
somehow. But I've totally changed my tune on sales after, especially after going through YC, where now I think about it much more like you want to be a trusted advisor to someone, and you just want to
Empathy.
find the right person for your product. It's fine if someone doesn't want your product, then, just tell them good day and try to find someone who is a good fit for it.
Right.
Um,
Sometimes it's probably hard just to identify who is the right customer for this, right? I know we spoke about it and you were like, I know exactly who it is, which is perfect, but I'm sure YC, that experience at least, like helps you understand like who is my target demographic, right?
well, we know who it is now. It is overwhelmingly people who are like millennials, new homeowners, um, people who have recently gotten married or have kids. Like buying art, it's an heirloom type purchase. Like if you buy an original piece, you're going to have that forever, pass it down, etc.
Hmm.
So there is a sort of like adulthood moment where it's like perfect to start collecting art.
Yep.
But in the early days, we didn't really know that. So we did a couple of things that could be instructive for other companies to do who are starting out. Number one is like make a bunch of guesses, which is what we did too. Like, what are your customer archetypes? Can you think of like 3 to 5 archetypes of like who you think might be interested in your product, and then try to sell to them.
Right.
And then another thing we did, which worked really well for us, but I actually haven't heard of other people doing this. We really leveraged Instagram and Facebook ads. You can slice and dice by so many demographic criteria. So we would just like run different ad campaigns and be like, okay, let's target like 20 to 29-year-olds living in the city
Hmm.
and see how that performs versus like
How'd it
older
go?
folks living in.
How are the Facebook ads going or Instagram ads? Did they teach you a lot?
Yeah, they did. They were great. I mean, we at the end of it, we had this whole like heat map that basically, it was fun for me and John as both like data people to like have this like
Wow.
data
So
set. Yeah.
okay, so let's recap a little bit because that's really important. So you made they had you list your assumptions about who your target archetypes were, okay?
Mhm.
And then you converted that into a falsifiable hypothesis. Basically they're age 25 millennials who just, it's a coming of age moment, like you said, they're in the working world. Maybe they're hedge fund analysts and now they have money to spend on art. So let's run Facebook ads to people of that nature, which is a great experiment. And let's determine if, how receptive they are. And then you can have a minimum success criteria that says, based on the ads, if we have a 5% conversion rate, we know that it is confirmed they are our customer archetype. And if not, it is not. Right. So something of that nature. Right.
Yeah, exactly. This was actually pre-YC that we did that. Um, when we got into YC, I think the biggest change we made as far as like talking to users and validating was and people who do like user research will know this. I think this is going to be super familiar to you, but I think other people may benefit from knowing this. There is a right way and a wrong way to ask questions in a user interview. I did the wrong way for like way too long.
Founders, we do that. Is it like the mom test? Is that what you're referring
Yes,
to? Yeah.
yes,
Go ahead and
exactly,
dive deep, man. Tell us about it.
exactly. So the Mom Test, this fantastic book that basically the thesis in a nutshell is you want to ask non-leading questions and you
Yep.
want to ask factual questions. So a good question is something like, when is the last time you bought art? Have you ever bought art before? How much did you spend? A bad question is, this is my website. Do you
You want
think
to
you might
buy
want
art?
to buy some art from it? How much do
Yeah.
you think you might be willing to pay?
Right.
That was like, man, I mean, there was just a lot of, so like we did good structured stuff like the Instagram ads strategy. That was great. But where we were really failing was that high resolution face to face user interview type feedback. That was like totally transformed through YC.
Wow. Yeah. I wonder, did they have some sort of software that helped you map out your feedback from those tests?
Um, from the sort of like user feedback interviews type
Or
stuff.
some sort of framework on YC's behalf that helped you map out the feedback?
So not through YC itself, but there are a bunch of YC companies, especially in the last batch. I saw a bunch that are doing this. Um, I actually don't have. We're pretty low tech actually, as far as how we process the user feedback.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Generally, we feel like we have a good enough sense of what's going on in our sort of like little ecosystem, uh, that we really focus on the flywheel, get the feedback, do something positive with it, measure the
The
output.
results. Build, measure, learn. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so that was like, was that mainly in the first month that you guys focused on that? What were the other 2 months like in the 90-day program?
Yeah, so the other 2 months, I mean, you get into YC. So I do the YC, like I do mock interviews for folks every batch, basically, to for people who get the interview, who
Mhm.
apply. Um, it really YC is really like designed for companies who have launched. And if you haven't launched and you get into YC, the first piece of advice you're going to get is launch your damn thing. I don't
Yeah,
care if it's
get it out there.
ugly. I don't care if it doesn't exactly work the way you want it to. Launch it, because once you go through that little, boot camp thing that I referred to, like it's about growth. It's about validating the idea, growing, iterating, but mainly just growing. I mean, you're not. It's very tempting, I think, for a lot of founders, ourselves included, to like build the perfect jewel, and you just like
My
make it.
precious. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's sounds great, but actually, the YC philosophy is so effective because like you're really not supposed to build stuff unless not having built it is getting in the way of growth. If you're growing, keep
Wow.
growing.
Say
Yeah.
that one more time. That was actually really well said.
Yeah. So you shouldn't be building stuff unless not having that built thing is impeding your growth.
Yeah.
So if you check in, if you're doing your weekly check in with your team and you're like, we had a great growth week last week, keep doing that. I mean, just keep growing. You don't need to build anything. Just you built a thing that is growing. Keep growing it. On the other hand, if you're like growth is falling off and users are complaining that, I don't know, the login is broken or something like that, fix the damn login. Then you can focus on growth again.
Yeah.
So it is a very iterative process of like monitoring your growth and only building when it's going to serve that growth.
Wow.
By
Really?
the way, the YC partners, oh man, they're awesome. They're also different, the ones we spent a lot of time with, but um, yeah, they snapped us out of some bad habits, like really, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, really damn quickly.
You
They
curse. Yeah.
yeah.
Let it out.
We definitely had meetings where they were like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, just sell your product. Like, stop
Stop
building these
complicating
cool
it.
things and just sell."
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of that, a lot of selling, a lot of marketing, a lot of figuring out, and then getting lots of feedback.
Wow. Man, I kind of get like goosebumps hearing about this because like, and you guys are humble. Founders are always humble, and I don't think you understand like getting through YC and learning all the things that you learned and facing your fears head on, right? Because there's a lot of things you were probably scared of when you went there and you saw these people with, I know you said you were like, whoa, these bright minds, this innovation, this technology. You're there with them, right? You are one of them, whether you like it or not. And when you're facing your fears and getting your product out there, you're learning so much quickly. That's the flywheel, like you said. So now it's like ArtInRes, man. Like I can't wait to see what's to come from you guys, and that's why like I want to know. So now you're probably in your last month of YC in our chronological explanation right now, right? So
Mhm.
what was that looking like? Now you realize like, whoa, we can hang with these guys. We're here in YC. We've learned everything they've learned. We're doing what they're doing. Profit probably increased, right? Because you're getting out there and selling your ass off, right? So what did that look like the last 30 days?
Well, okay. So first of all, that's a very charitable way of putting it. I mean, I think that me, like a lot of other founders, YC or not, like um, totally feel the imposter syndrome. I mean, it's like, you know, it's very flattering of you to, think I am this awesome founder or whatever, but like, You know, just because I went through YC, I still feel like, man, did I like deserve to go through? Did like, am I, you know, up to snuff, that kind of thing? And it's not just me. A lot of founders feel that way. It's
Absolutely.
it's hard to own it sometimes, especially when like so many of our peers are like, you know, you have a nice business going along and I love it and I'm proud of it. But some of our peers have built like these Goliath businesses that do like hard tech stuff and things like that. I don't, you know, I just feel very blessed to have been a part of the batch. I don't,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Well
um,
said. But building on that, before we go to the next topic, because it's so fresh in my mind, I interviewed another founder who kind of said the same thing. He's like, you know, we go through imposter syndrome daily. Like, who am I to be in Y Combinator? Who am I to be making these sales that impact the data of these bigger companies? He was the data pipeline company. And I was thinking to myself, and I said it, you know, I was like, I wonder if there's a direct correlation between founders with imposter syndrome and the success of their companies, because I think the more you go through that, the more you have to prove to yourself that, you know, you are worth it and your company is worth being, you know, ranked amongst these companies. Not that you're thinking that way, but you're like, I have to prove myself, right? I think that is ultimately probably the fuel that gets you guys to where you want to be. So I think you're on the right track when it comes to that mindset.
I appreciate it. And, you know, I'm proud of what we built. And the one thing I will say for sure is we learned so much going through YC. It's like they, you know, whether your company is big or small or whatever, like I would encourage anyone to apply. And if you get in, they, you know, YC earns their 7.5% or whatever it is.
Yeah,
And like they are awesome. Um,
absolutely. What did the last month look like? What was that
Last
leading up
month.
to demo day?
Yeah, so our last month was chaos because mm,
You're like, what? We just talked about systemizing everything. You're like, no, it was absolute wild. What happened?
it was, no, it really was because, you know, we had been balls to the wall with trying to grow the rental product, and we were
Okay.
growing it, but it wasn't growing fast enough, and we kind of knew
Uh,
something was off.
okay.
Um, so we did a very structured approach to user feedback in the form of a product market fit survey. Some
Mm,
people will be familiar with this one. Um, the founder of Superhuman made this product market fit survey that is just a few questions long and basically asks people how disappointed they would be if your product
didn't
no
exist.
longer existed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sean Ellis talks about that a lot as well.
it's
Are you,
it's a
you know who Sean Ellis is, right? Fa-
uh,
uh, have you
I
seen
actually don't.
the movie about Mark Zuckerberg?
Yes.
I forgot what it's called. I always forget what it's called. But remember, he meets this guy that becomes his advisor, and he talks about dropping the name the Facebook from Facebook. That's the guy that kind of pioneered that as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Okay, awesome.
growth hacking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
such a great tool. I mean, it's an amazing survey. It really works very well. I mean, we've done it a few times since then. We've really grown to like it internally. Um, so anyway, we did that,
What were the
and
results? Dun, dun,
that's when we found
dun.
out that people were jerry rigging this rental product to buy in installments. So we
Ah,
pivoted the business in like a weekend, basically, to
really?
like no longer do rentals.
Yeah.
It
How much
was a
coffee did you drink in that 24 or 48-hour time period?
I mean, you know, it was when you get into YC, okay, and they sit you down, and I'm pretty sure they do this with every batch. They did this with our batch. They'll tell you, like, guys, you need to exercise, you need to eat healthy. It's going to be very intense. So, like, it's important, it's paramount that you take care of yourselves.
Ah, good stuff.
And we were pretty good about that. I exercised quite a bit. I ate decently healthy. But I mean, you are really, at least for us, I mean, we were all putting in like 14 hours a day,
Mm,
every freaking day, Saturday, Sunday, every day. So yeah, I mean that the pace of just like work was just, you know, absolutely maxed out.
yeah.
Um,
So, okay,
so
so uh, okay, talk about that weekend. that you pivoted, right? So you have your developers because you mentioned your co-founder's back-end developer. He loves it. Then you brought on a front-end developer, right? Who stayed in New York, correct? Which
No,
one
he
stayed
was
in New
with
York?
us there. We had another founder, Noni, who stayed in New York,
Okay.
uh, and she was doing operations in New York.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So what were you doing during that pivot? They were writing code and were you doing okay. So what I'm getting at is they did the software development, right? And the product development side.
Mhm.
Were you still doing customer development throughout that entire process? Were you like, okay, how do we take that feedback, systemize it, turn it into product requirements, get that off to the devs? What were you doing?
Yeah, well, one thing that a thing about the way we work, also influenced by YC, is we try to keep everyone on the team working on like one push at a time. So I'm not a developer. I know enough to do some stuff. I picked up some stuff over the past few years. I can build a little tiny application that does stuff I want it to do and that kind of thing, but I'm not getting deep in the code base. But it's still helpful to have non-tech people involved in that process,
Yeah,
because you really
absolutely.
don't you don't want to build a product in isolation.
Hmm.
So, we built the thing, but we also needed to figure out all of these related questions, like what are we going to measure? Um, how are we going to make this announcement? What's going to constitute like success or failure of this experiment? We had to write a lot of copy. We had like an entire website that was about like renting, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden that needed to be about buying in installments and the virtues
Yeah.
of buying in installments.
Well, I just
So
realized that. Yeah, you had to write a ton of sales copy if you're going to change up your entire value proposition, right?
yeah, I mean, we had automated emails that went out when you bought a piece. We had emails that went out when you signed up. We had all of the sales pages on the website. We had our Instagram and other channels. So yeah, there's just a lot of stuff to change in a very short period of time. But the awesome thing was, after we did it, we just got this like giant lump of sales right off of the bat, and we were like,
Really?
okay, we
You knew you were on the right
we're on
track.
to
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
You defined whether it was like the minimum success criteria. I know everyone uses a different term, but you were trying to decide what determines whether this is a pass fail experiment, essentially, right? Like with the pivot. I'm
Yes.
sure a ton of sales probably warranted a pass. Right?
Yeah.
It's like pretty clear you guys did the right thing.
It was, especially because we would grind so hard for like a rental. I mean, it was so much work to get one of those going. And then we made this change, and it was just like they were pouring in.
Yeah. Wow, man. And then I want to give you a chance to talk about this too, because I see on your website, I'm like, every time you talk about a change, I'm like, whoa, let me look at this, imagine what it was like in the past. But you're like, you have something it's new. Take the taste quiz. That
Yes.
I think it's a lot deeper than it's actually take the taste quiz. Is that a way for you to better understand your users, right? A little customer discovery, yeah, a little user
Yeah.
research, right?
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a secret sauce, but I
You don't
think
have to
it's,
talk about it if it's
oh, no,
private.
it's okay.
Okay.
So putting the right artwork in front of the right people is like a fundamental problem of our business and similar businesses. We have thousands of artworks. I think we're up to about 7,000 now. So it's a lot.
7,000.
Yeah, 7,000 like individual pieces.
Whoa, where do you keep that?
So they're all across the country in artists' studios.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Because I remember
Yep.
you said, wait, you shipped it, you had to have it in your apartment. I didn't know if you have to go then get a warehouse.
Yeah, we decentralized the model because
Nice.
we
Drop
didn't want
shipped, right?
shipping container anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
um, so we have all of these artworks, and there's this matching problem because, unlike a lot of other purchases, when you buy a piece of art, you are sort of buying this like expression of yourself that you're going to keep presumably forever and hang on your wall. And it's personal, and it's important that you make the right choice. So, as a prospective collector, you kind of want to look through everything and choose the best thing. But who has time to look at 7,000 artworks? I mean, not me. And
Right. So that
yeah.
helps you segment their experience or customize their experience on the website.
So what that does is helps us drill down to exactly what kind of art someone is into very, very quickly. So here's the secret
Mm,
sauce thing that I was alluding to earlier.
exclusive information.
The way the way that actually works is we use something called a collaborative filtering algorithm. It's a machine learning algorithm. So the more people that do that taste wizard, the more data we get on like an agent and like what they like and dislike, and the better the algorithm training gets. So it started off as this like thing that kind of worked, and it just works better and better and better the
Yeah.
more
The more
people that.
data that's fed into
Mhm.
it, right? Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's been a great thing. And then it's also an extremely powerful way to get someone introed into like, thinking about art. What do I like? What don't I like? I mean, that's a question like a lot of
Teaches
new
them.
art collectors don't know.
Yeah. Well,
So
teaches them about themselves. Yeah. Sorry, I
mhm.
didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not at
But
all.
so is that an idea that came out of YC, or you guys thought about that more recently? Because it says new on it.
That's more recent.
Yeah.
It's not that new. It's about 6 months old, but
But it helps
uh,
when you see
newish.
yeah. I like that it says new right there because it makes me want to take it. Obviously, I'm not going to take the quiz right now, but I will to figure out what kind of art I like. Um, but so we didn't talk about demo day. How did demo day go?
Demo day, demo day was tricky for us for a couple of reasons. Number one, we were supposed to be, we were supposed to do an in-person demo day, but I didn't even mention this. A global pandemic happened near the end of our batch. I don't know if you're
Oh,
familiar.
really?
It's called COVID-19.
I've never heard. No.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was this crazy thing.
What was
No,
that like?
it, it was, man. So, right. On top of all of the sort of like baseline insanity of YC, right? 3 weeks before demo day, we're all supposed to like, I don't know this, but from what I hear, you're supposed to go into a big room and all these investors and folks are supposed to come and you
Sounds
give your
kind of terrifying, to be honest.
on stage. I was excited for it. Um, that didn't happen. 3 weeks before demo day, they were like, this COVID-19 thing is really serious. And like, we have to stop seeing everybody in person and demo day is going to go online. So we went online.
The first virtual demo day, right?
The first virtual demo day, and this is just a rumor, but I've heard the last in-person batch of YC.
Really?
That's
Whoa.
that's what I've heard.
It's interesting. It makes sense since they're getting bigger. When you think about it, it might actually benefit the participants more. But yeah, wow.
Yeah,
Exclusive.
yeah, interesting. So demo day was, it was a little stressful because it was just like at the last second this thing changed. Plus we pivoted. Um, plus we got into this sort of like, there's a sort of philosophical question, which is like, what do we really pitch? Because we have our new model, but we only have like 3 weeks of data for it. I mean, yeah, we had that giant chunk of sales and that was awesome. But do we really like have enough to fundraise right now? Or do we want to like kind of delay and get more, get a better understanding of our traction and then fundraise? So we talked to some investors, but then we decided pretty quickly afterward that like we were just going to keep doing our own thing and then fundraise later, once we felt like we needed the funds. And it's been basically a year and we are still doing our own thing.
Wow. Congratulations, man.
Yeah, I mean, we may fundraise, but thanks. Yeah, it's been cool to sort of continue to bootstrap the business to like where we want it to be.
That's a whole discussion we could get into, and we don't have time for this episode, but it seems like on the surface that going the traditional VC route is like, oh, that's every entrepreneur's dream. Becoming less and less of a more viable route because it's like it's not like you're signing your soul to the devil. I don't want to make all investors sound bad, but it's like it's a lot of anxiety involved with that, right? When you owe someone money that they give to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't personally lived it, but for sure, like people stress about I talk to a lot of batchmates who have raised, and there are mixed feelings. I mean, some investors are awesome. They make intros. They are really in your corner. They understand the ups and downs, the vicissitudes of running a startup. Other ones, like, not so much. Like, they're putting pressure on you. They're sort of like
Get to your next
making,
milestone. Yeah.
stressing you out. Maybe conveying some like impatience or frustration, and you're already probably pretty stressed if you're running a startup. So
Yeah.
uh,
I think you're
there
making
are,
the right decision, man. Yeah, you guys put in the work. You did the growth hacking experiments to really validate your business model. I mean, I feel like it's the smartest thing you could do. Not that I know a ton, but just from the outside in.
yeah, we may raise in the future, but it's kind of like that same YC mentality. Like, do we need the money to grow? Is the money preventing us from growing? If that becomes the question, and we're like, growth has stalled because we really need like a $500,000 marketing budget to funnel into this, channel or set of channels, then we'll do it. But we're actually able to grow basically for free right now. So
Really.
that's what we're doing.
Whew. Well, that's a dream, right?
I mean, well, for free minus like a lot of hard work, but what
Right.
I mean is it's not paid.
You have a flywheel right now, essentially growing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Good stuff, man. Well, let me tell you what, like we do have to wrap up because this is probably the longest episode I've ever done, to be honest. Like I
Yeah,
haven't
I'm a
really tracked time.
chatterbox.
Yeah, no, no, no. It was so interesting. Like we could still go for another hour, to be completely honest, but we do have to wrap up. And for everyone out there listening, I want to give you, John, a time for you to tell people how they can get in touch with you. Make sure you plug that quiz because I think that's a great idea. And maybe not give your personal information out there for everybody, but tell them how they can stay in touch with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm actually pretty open to just people hitting me up if someone wants to do that. My website, johnsillings.com, you can find contact information for me there, or find me on LinkedIn or something like that. If you want to chat about ArtInRes stuff, our email address is everyone@artinres.com, ARTINRES.com. If you're interested in potentially buying a piece of art for your house, check out the site. It would be awesome to have some new collectors find us through the pod. What else? I'm just like generally happy to help out people if it's like YC applications or startup advice or anything like that. I've definitely learned a lot of hard lessons, and I get a lot of joy from helping other people not suffer through stuff I've been through.
Not staring into the glass, and was it staring into the abyss and eating glass? That's what Elon Musk says. That's what startups are like. Yeah. Well,
That's
thank you
great.
so much, John. It's been an honor. I will even be picking your brain because you're a wealth of information. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been a complete honor.
Cool. Likewise. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.